Hey guys, it's Nick. Thanks for tuning into this video of Mordheim Tactics, and this was a viewer request on just to break down thoughts on skills, and these are my thoughts and my opinions. So you're open to leave some comments below on whether you think I'm right or wrong, or whether you agree or disagree. But essentially, requested was when to take skills, which skills to take, when in a campaign would you take them, early, in the middle, or the late. What's their concept, what do they do, and then what kind of combos you can do with them. So this video I'm going to go through just the combat skills. You can see I've got the other ones up there, but this is all on a spreadsheet that I will have in the comments below or the description below. This is a Google document, so you're more than welcome to take a look at it yourself, make a copy, print it out, whatever you want to do. So this video will just be on combat, and I'll do the rest of them in separate little videos. So hopefully they're not too long, and you can go to whichever video and skill you are most interested in finding. So strike to injure, and I will read the skills. Or I will just briefly say what they do. Strike to injure is +1 to all injury rolls caused by the model in hand-to-hand combat. So this is definitely an early pick. If you roll up a skill, take this one on your combat characters, obviously. It will increase his combat effectiveness. Now, I do want us to say the 4 categories I've broken these things down into is survivability, keeping your character alive, combat effectiveness, if it just makes them better in combat, shooting, obviously the shooting skills are going to have shooting effectiveness, and then warband ramp up, which is just generating income and finding equipment and whatnot. So those are the little categories that I broke them up into. So strike to injure is great. I think it's always good at getting your opponent's killed, so usually you take him out of action on 5-6 +1 to injury. You take him out on 3-4-5-6. So I like to combo this up with bladed weapons, because the critical hit chart for bladed weapons, if you roll up high enough, it's 2 wounds +2 to injury. So you have 2 dice for rolling up injury, and now instead of it being +2, it's going to be +3. So essentially anything but a 1 will kill your opponent. This should guarantee a death. Unless your opponent has, because armor is ignored, unless they have more than 1 wound, you're rolling 2 injury dice, which means if you roll 2 snake eyes or snake eyes altogether, then yeah, your guy's going to survive. Hopefully you had a 3rd or 4th attack in there that can help kill him, but as long as you don't roll 2 snake eyes, you roll a 2 or better, you're going to have +3 to injury, so you're rolling 5-6 for taking out of action. Only other situation is if you're fighting a dwarf, they only get knocked out of action on 6, but for most cases, this is pretty convenient. So instead of going ahead into the next one, I want to skip ahead to Expert Swordsman. So Expert Swordsman, the warrior may reroll all missed attacks if he is using a sword in hand-to-hand phase in the turn that he charges. So it doesn't say it has to be, unless FAQ'd or errata, it doesn't say it has to be only the attacks with the sword. It says all attacks. So if he's armed with a sword or 2, you can reroll misses in the turn that you charged. Now it only applies to normal swords or weeping blades, not double-handed weapons. That's fine. But I kind of want to follow up with this one because in conjunction to strike to injure, you want bladed weapons. So if you're doing bladed weapons and you get a second skill, go expert swordsman or vice versa, depending on which one you want. That's why I do say expert swordsman is great to have as an early pick. So obviously this will increase your combat effectiveness, but I also say that this skill kind of helps with your survivability, because if you're charging, then that means you're getting the attack in, but also if you're attacking with expert swordsman, you should have 2 swords, or at least 1 sword, obviously, and swords are great for parrying. So this skill kind of, with strike to injure and using swords, allows you to, make your guy a little bit more survivable, but also make him a lot easier at killing opponents and taking them out of action. So if you wanted to combo either a 3rd skill or replace one of these 2 with Expert Swordsman, when it comes to strength skills, Unstoppable Charge allows you to add 1 weapon skill when charging. So this allows you to get an extra weapon skill, and then in conjunction with Expert Swordsman, reroll missed hits on the turn that you charge with swords. So hopefully this weapon skill gets you at 3 to hit, and then you're re-rolling your 1s and 2s, and hopefully that helps. So I say Expert Swordsman and Unstoppable Charge is a great combo also. Alright, so now we can back up to Combat Master. So this allows anybody that's fighting more than 1 opponent to gain an extra attack. In addition, a passive ability is he is immune to all lone tests. Now this ability I say is more of a middle ability, mid-campaign. It's not my first pick. I think there's other things that are more effective. But I do mark off that it is for both survivability and combat effectiveness. So survivability, he passes all alone tests. So you can have him out by himself fighting multiple people, which is great. And then he's also a little bit better in combat, which makes him a little bit more effective. Now, I do recommend that you pair this up with Pit Fighter if possible, as Pit Fighter gives you +1 attack and +1 weapon skill when you're fighting inside ruins or building. So this guy, if he's running around with Pit Fighter and Combat Master, he's able to run into a building by himself, pass all alone tests, and get 2 extra attacks and +1 weapon skill, which is pretty damn good. So next up is weapons training. Now this is a skill that I say is more late campaign. It's not always useful in my opinion because essentially it's so you can use items that are in the common items list or rare items that you have to roll to find that you're not usually allowed to use. So let's say you have a hero group for argument's sake that cannot take swords. Well, you want to use weapons training so that he can use swords. And swords are common to find, so that's not a big deal. You can buy them whenever you want. But let's say you have robbed somebody and you stole the Skaven player's Weeping Blades. Well, now you want to use the Weeping Blades in close combat. Okay, that sounds good. They're decent. Or let's say you got fighting claws or something. But when you're robbed, or all your equipment is lost, or you get sold to the pits or something, then you've got this skill but no item for it. So it's kind of, if you have a free weapon, that's why I say combo it up with free weapons. If you've robbed somebody or you come across something in exploration that you're not usually able to use, like let's say a halberd, which, is a very simple item, but, you know, you want to use it and you want to waste a skill on it, and I say waste because I feel like there's other skills that you can invest in, then go for it. It adds flavor to your army. I've had a lot of guys that have picked this up. I've given them expert swordsman because I got a unique item from another player or from a scenario, and it's cool. It adds some flavor to the list, but if you're looking for the most effective skills, I say wait for later or leave it out altogether. Alright, next up we've got Web of Steel, and this allows your character to get +1 to all his critical hits tables on hand-to-hand combat. So, this is cool. I like this skill. It's not my favorite. I would say it's a middle of the campaign kind of skill. Definitely increases your combat effectiveness. I say it is fun to pair up with definitely Strike to Injure, because if you're doing the bladed weapons, strike to injure little combo, then it's just going to increase you getting to that critical hit chart that allows you to just do 2 wounds, no armor save, +2 to injury. That one's by far the best, and that'll get you that much closer. Now, another thing that you might consider is just specific weapons. If you want to just take a look at the critical injury chart and just find, what is going to tickle your fancy, then, that's something to consider. So we've already gone through bladed weapons. Let's omit missile weapons and move on into bludgeoning weapons. Now, bludgeoning weapons are relatively cheap. Clubs, maces, hammers, flails, double-handed hammers, they're cheap to purchase. So I always focus on number 6, bludgeoned. It's essentially killing blow. If you fail your armor slave, the guy's just out of action. There's no rolling injury, there's no other wounds, there's no step aside or any of that stuff. The victim automatically goes out of action if he fails his armor save. So to get +1 on the critical hit table, that's 5/6 automatically dead. You can get Wild Sweep, which is alright, and Club, which is alright, and Hammered's okay if you rolled up a 1, but if you want to increase that chance of getting bludgeoned, hell, definitely worth the combo. So here you're going to try to get up on 5/6 for unarmed combat. 1 and 2 is alright, 3 and 4 is okay. 3 and 4 is kind of useless if they pass their save. But if you try to get Mighty Blow, it's +2 to injury. If you have, if you roll up a 4, 5, or 6, you'll get Mighty Blow, which is great. And in conjunction with Strike to Injure, you're back at that +3 to injury, which is wonderful. If you're running a guy with a thrusting weapon, Spiel, Halberd, Lance, etc., you can essentially try to get Kebab, which has this funky little, stab the guy, move d6 inches forward, but you're really looking at the +2 to injury that you're trying to find. So on a 50% chance of getting Kebab, it's worth the +1 to critical hit chart. So the last one we have here for combat is Step Aside, which is definitely an early campaign pick if you roll up a skill. It's definitely a survivability skill because on a 5+ after armor saves, essentially a ward save, on a 5+, you ignore the hit against you, which is great, and you can use it on all the hits and wounds that are against you, so it functions like a ward save. And it also increases your combat effectiveness solely by staying alive longer. I say this is a great combo for parry because if you're really trying to keep somebody alive, say your caster, which some casters have combat skills, some don't, depends on the warband. But let's say your warband hero, for example, your leader, you want to keep him alive because he's got some good academic skills and he's got the good leadership and he's decent. You want to keep him alive. Giving him step aside and then a sword or two to parry or a buckler to parry with is fairly, defensive. So that is a quick review on the combat skills. I'll do the shooting skills next in the next video. So if you guys have any comments or questions or things to add, please leave them below, and I will see you in the next tactics video.